gorgeous! Happy Frugal Friday to you! As promised in last Frugal Friday's video, I'm going to be doing a drugstore dupe for MAC eyeshadows list for you today. And this is using the 3 quads from Physicians Formula. These are all matte eyeshadows and I'm going to match them up with some MAC matte eyeshadows. Say that 3 times fast. If you've not tried these quads, you definitely have to. The quality is amazing for matte eyeshadows and I'm thoroughly impressed by them. For this dupe video, I only have 9 MAC eyeshadows that matched up with the 12 eyeshadows in these palettes. And there are a couple MAC eyeshadows that I'll be showing you today in the swatches that do not match up exactly. There are very minor differences in coloring, but you won't be able to tell because of the way that the eyeshadows apply. So if you're going to substitute with one eyeshadow that doesn't match exactly to a MAC eyeshadow, you're getting close enough to the color to where it doesn't really make a difference. One more thing before we get going here. One eye that I'm wearing today is all drugstore and the other eye is all MAC. And I did this because I wanted you to see how close some of these dupes actually are between the MAC eyeshadows and the PF quads. So I'll zoom in here and let you guess throughout the video which one is MAC and which one is the drugstore one, and I'll tell you at the end. The first quad we'll start with is the classic Nudes Quad, and I'm going to begin with the eyeshadow up here on the upper left. This is an exact dupe for MAC's Saddle. I initially wanted to compare this shade with MAC's Bamboo, and it is somewhat of a dupe for Bamboo if it's applied lightly, but it's ultimately a dead-on accurate dupe for Saddle. It's an orangey brown, high level of pigmentation, insane pigmentation. It's actually a little bit more pigmented compared to Saddle. Ultimately, a great dupe for either MAC Saddle or MAC Bamboo if you apply this shade lightly. Moving over to the right of the palette, you will find a dupe for MAC's Kid. Identical, no difference between this one and Kid at all. They apply exactly the same level of pigmentation. And for those of us who are still upset about MAC discontinuing Kid, why do you do that, MAC? This is a great cheap one to use in place of Kid instead of having to hunt it down and pay something like 20 or 30 bucks for a discontinued eyeshadow. On the bottom left of the palette you will find a highlighter blending shade. This is a dupe for MAC's Blanc Type. Compared to Blanc Type, it's just a little bit less pigmented. It doesn't go on as strong as Blanc Type does, but the color, finish, they're exactly the same. So if you don't want to spend MAC prices, but you want to get a comparable eyeshadow that blends like Blanc Type does, this is a great one. Last eyeshadow we'll talk about in this palette is that dark brown on the bottom right there. This is a close dupe for MAC's Swiss Chocolate. It's not identical. And the reason I say that is because it doesn't have that strong pigmentation that Swiss Chocolate has. Swiss Chocolate has these really vibrant red tones, whereas this eyeshadow in the PF Quad has those red tones, but they're not as strong as Swiss Chocolate. And when I tried to find an eyeshadow in MAC's line that matched this, that was the closest I could get. If Swiss Chocolate was a little bit more toned down, that's the exact color that it would be. Next palette we're duping here is the Quartz Quartet. This is one that has 3 MAC eyeshadow dupes in it. There was one eyeshadow in here that I could not find a dupe for to save my life. And that is the first eyeshadow that you'll find in this palette. It's a smoky light purple. I wanted to compare it to Digit, but Digit is just way too light and a little bit too purple compared to this shade. But it does remind me of Laura Mercier's Plum Smoke, but it's still not exact for that eyeshadow either. So, no dupe for that eyeshadow. But if we move over to the right of the palette here, you will find a dupe for MAC's Malt. Dead-on identical dupe for Malt. This is one of my most favorite eyeshadows from MAC. I love this eyeshadow, and I recommend that everyone try this eyeshadow because it's one of those that has the pinky tones in it, but it's still a neutral shade. It's great for your crease shade and as a transition color. Absolutely love it with every single color in the color spectrum. You can use it with greens, blues, grays, pinks, purples. The list is unlimited and it's just an all-around great eyeshadow to have. So if you don't want to pay the price of MAC, you got Malt right there. Moving to the bottom left of the palette, you will find a dupe for MAC Quarry. Identical dupe. no difference whatsoever. This is a great color for the crease, and Quarry also, just so you know, is a dupe for Urban Decay's Tease eyeshadow that is in the Naked 2 palette. So if you've been looking for a dupe that is a little bit cheaper than Urban Decay or MAC for Quarry or Tease, great one right here. On the bottom right of the palette, you will find a deep, plummy, purple, smoky shade. The closest I could get to this color in MAC's line is Blackberry, but they're still off in color. If you look at the Physicians Formula version, it's a little bit darker than Blackberry, and Blackberry is a little bit more purple compared to that shade. I almost did not include this dupe because they're really not exact dupes of one another, but I thought that it would be worth mentioning since the colors are so incredibly close to one another. Last palette we'll be duping is Canyon Classics, and there are only 2 MAC eyeshadow dupes within this entire palette. I know. I tried to find a dupe for this gray shade, could not find it. In the upper left of the quad, you'll find a dupe for MAC's Omega. Omega is a great eyeshadow. It's the perfect crease shade. Definitely one of those staples that I always recommend when you ask me, what are the first 15 eyeshadows that I should start with from MAC? Omega is one of those. It's an awesome crease transition shade, very blendable, very buildable, all around great color. Directly to the right of that is a dupe from MAC's Vanilla. This is identical in terms of shade and pigmentation, and if you're wondering how this type of shade compares to, say, something like MAC's Blanc Type, this is a whiter version of Blanc Type, whereas Blanc Type has more beige tones in it. For the last 2 eyeshadows here on the bottom of the palette, you have a smoky gray and then a darker brown. For this smoky gray shade, could not find anything in MAC's line whatsoever. I duped so many of MAC's silvers and grays compared to this. This is more of a blue-toned gray, and MAC doesn't really have anything like that in their line. The eyeshadow directly next to it is actually a darker version of the eyeshadow up here on the upper left, so it's a darker version of MAC's Omega. Unfortunately, MAC does not have a darker version of Omega in their line. Now that you've seen all the dupes, have you been able to guess which eye is all Drugstore and which eye is all MAC? I bet you got it right. You know how I know you got it right? Because you've been hanging out with me way too much. Alright, the left eye is, or actually your right, my left, is Drugstore, and the right eye is all MAC. I hope you found this dupes list helpful today and that it has saved you just a little bit more money in the makeup department. And I will have listed below all of the dupes that we discussed today, just in case you want to reference them later on. Let me know any Drugstore dupes that you have found for the higher end eyeshadows. Thanks so much for watching. See you again next Friday for another Frugal Friday. I can't say this. Quartz Quartet. There are 12 MAC eyeshadows. Quartz Quartet. Quartz Quartet. If I keep saying it, I'm not going to be able to say it. As promised, last Frugal Friday, this Frugal Friday, Quartz Quartet.